Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana over that championship because I was there in Los Angeles when all that was happening. And so it's really cool to have everybody could see that belt, and it'll bring back a different memory of a different event or a different show, and there'll be an emotional response to it. And I think that that's just great.
Matteo, your turn once again.
Yeah. Okay, so Joe, I am a commentator too. I do some commentator for the Italian Wrestling Association on Open Wrestling TV. So do you have some tips for do the best work?
Well, there is one thing you want to do, and I think that's most important. And sometimes when you watch a lot of independent shows out there, you could tell that the person calling the action is trying to get themselves over more than they're trying to get the show over. And I think that yes, selfishly, if you're good, that could work, and it could open opportunities for you to go do something somewhere else. But you're not helping the product, and you're not helping the people who are in that ring, falling on their necks and doing all these crazy athletic things. You're just trying to get yourself. So I think the most important thing is you've got to try to get the product over itself. Is you got to be focused on making sure that this is presented in the best way that you possibly can. And one of the ways you could do that is by making sure you do your homework with it too. And there's all this, wrestling has so many different terms, and all these characters have different names for different things that they're doing. So it takes that sort of research and that sort of dedication to it that you really need to do, especially if you're coming into some place that's new. It's the first time you've been there. You've got to do a lot of research and get a lot of catch up to figure out who's who, what's what, and what you need to call. And especially, heels and baby faces and things like that are important as to know what you're talking about. And then I think down to that, it just comes down to being a good fan and also a good listener. I think that's what's really important too, is you have to listen to the person that you're next to and have that conversation with them. I imagine you probably have a color commentator, or are you the color? Oh, so you have a color commentator, so you're there. And so you also have to understand the roles that you have as that duo. You have to think like JR and King, or currently now maybe JR and Taz, or things like that, where you have that person who has that experience in the ring, and then you can lean on them to comment on that. To being, the play-by-play guy, or the main, or the lead. There's a lot of different names for it. You're kind of just the captain steering the ship, where at the same time that color commentator needs to add in a lot of flavor. And that's their responsibility. They're the ones that are going to be able to tell you what hurts and why, the strategy and how it applies to that match. And so you have to be in that partnership with them while at the same time having fun. If you could tell if there's shows where it's just two people that are just slapped together and there's no relationship and there's no chemistry between them, it comes off that way. You end up stepping on each other's words a lot and things like that. So developing that chemistry with your broadcast team, doing your homework is important. And I think the other thing is it depends on the type of show you're working as well. If you're doing commentary for an open room, let's say your microphone's just out to speakers, it's not going to air on television or on the internet, you could just focus on everything that you could see in the ring. Whereas if you're working on something that's specifically for the internet or for television, you also have to remember the vast majority of your audience is not in that room. And so you need to focus on what's happening on the monitor. You have to kind of really, as tempting as it is to look over because you're a fan and oh, here comes Homicide. He's going to do a frog splash off the top rope. I'd like to see that in person. It's important to kind of stay glued to that monitor. And if you look at NWA Power now, where we've put the commentary table and stuff, you'll notice our monitor's over to my right, and I'm like this the majority of the show. I'm like, looking at this. The ring's over here, but I'm looking here because that's what I need to see, because I have to be communicating with the thousands or millions of people that could be either watching that episode or watching a clip from it as well. You have to keep in mind, you never know what clip could end up going viral. So you need to be able to make sure that you're seeing what those people are going to be seeing when they're looking at it on their phone, on their laptop, or on their computer. You need to be able to make that the conversation that you're having. And I think so that's really the key components that you have there. Do your homework, try to have chemistry with whoever your partner is, and then at the same time focus on what's actually happening in the monitor. And also practice. Practice also is fantastic. There's no reason why you can't, bring up WrestleMania 19, put it on mute, and sit next to someone and call the matches. And it'll feel a little weird because you won't hear the sounds of the ring or the sounds of the crowd, but it's just practice. And then you're getting into it because, when you're working as a wrestler, you can go to the independent show down the road if they have a Thursday night show or something in auditorium, in front of a high school or something like that, in front of 20, 30 people, and you could work things out and you could try to experiment in front of a smaller crowd and see how things go. The commentator, you don't really have that as an option. So you have to find that experience in yourself. And then if you're good, you're just going to have other people reach out to you that do have those platforms, and you're going to do that. So just for myself, I work, a company called RCW, which is based out of here at San Antonio. I work with Jazz and Rodney Mack a lot for the Dog Pound Professional Wrestling. I'm going to be heading up to TSW up in Dallas. So once kind of word gets out there that you're there and people want to work with you, then you'll be invited to go do more of those things. And I think that's also why you're seeing guys, as you mentioned before, Ian Riccaboni, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. You know why he's everywhere?
Yes.
Because he's fantastic. He's fantastic at what he does. He is personable. He has a great voice, and he has a great mind for the business, and he can work with anyone. That's the other great thing about Ian is he's just such a good, genuine human being. You want to listen to him talk for an hour, 2 hours, or even 3 hours. So that's what's really great.
And his work with the King Drama.
Oh, yeah.
It's very nice. Very
nice.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice work.
And talk about a guy that, has a very interesting voice in himself and has really made himself, he was, the time in WWE where he's singing and he's wrestling, and to be able to move into the broadcast thing, it's really commendable what he's been able to do. And it's also when you hear Ian and Caprice, it's fantastic as well. And that's what I love about Caprice is not only can he, as you've seen in NWA, he could go with the best of them. I mean, he's so fantastic. He is really the ageless one, and he's doing all this incredible stuff in the ring, but he could also throw a suit on and sit next to Ian and be super insightful and intelligent and just be able to call all this amazing stuff that he's able to call from his experience as a wrestler and also from him being a broadcaster as well. So there's a wealth of great commentary teams that are out there these days. And I think that just kind of goes to show what we have out there and how many people are still passionate about the sport and they're willing to do it. The barriers to entry are a lot smaller now. If you think about it, you needed to have a TV deal 15 years ago in order to be able to do a commentary thing. Now you've got independent promotions like Mission Pro Wrestling, which is owned by Thunder Rosa, which I've done commentary for. But it's an all women's show. They finally found a 2-woman team that are fantastic. And they're able to broadcast their stuff on Title Match, which is a streaming service. We use Title Match to broadcast our streaming service with RCW. And so, Javi Perez, Handsome Javi, who's my color commentator there, who's very good at what he's doing there. He wouldn't have gotten that opportunity 15 years ago because there was no way to get that streaming service out to people. So you had to get a television deal, which is much more difficult. There's only so many channels, especially if you're trying to get something local. So the internet and social media has really opened the door for us to even just have this conversation, being able to have a podcast like this and to have this conversation. I mean, think of how far apart we're on other sides of the world right now having this conversation. It's because the technology's caught us up to that point. And so you're able to see that with wrestling. And that's going to give a lot more people from the broadcast side more opportunities to be able to hold a microphone or to wear a headset and to be that part of the show and the experience.
Okay, so in your opinion, how much important is your support for a rising star to be, I don't know, a bad guy or a good guy, and to help with the audience behind the monitor?
Well, I think what you're asking there is the role that I have in commentary is so important because you have to know where you're supposed to be able to go. And sometimes that story can adjust and things can happen in the ring that maybe weren't initially planned to happen in the ring. So you have to be able to have good improvisational skills I think that really helps as well. And also what I kind of like is, I've been involved in the sport of professional wrestling for over a decade at this point. I, like many other people, started as that outlaw mud show wrestler that was working in front of 20 people and doing all kinds of just squash matches for Brawlin' Bo Cooper at, an Elks Lodge in Southern California. And so I've been able to take a lot of that experience that I have and be able to help a lot of these younger guys in there and to give them a lot of notes and constructive criticism to get them to be better than they need to be, especially when it comes to having those mic skills. And sometimes it's just little things that, don't get taught to a lot of people, even at their professional wrestling schools, because there's a lot of schools and training facilities out there that kind of focus on how you are able to do the moves to things and how you're able to, actually work a match and all that. And that's all very, 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 very important. But it's the little things that'll help you get over, especially on shows that are broadcast through television and through the internet. Things like being able to know where your hard cam is, how to be able to hold a microphone, where you need to stand, and there's a lot of things out there that from my perspective, bug me. When you watch things like when you watch AEW and you have Tony Schiavone and he's holding the microphone for that talent and they take it out of his hand. All right, well, now what the fuck's Tony doing? He's just there now. Well, you've completely done that, especially when the babyface does it. It makes no sense. You need to respect that person. You need to respect that position and understand that it is part of the show. And that even though there's someone there that's holding the microphone for you, your character and whatever it is you're trying to convey needs to be big enough to where people are still just focused on you and not the person holding the microphone. But you're also giving that opportunity to have a conversation with people. And I think that's the thing is we're all trying to tell stories. It's all about storytelling. And if you're going to take a part of the mechanism that makes that story successful and just throw it in the trash in front of everybody, then what are you doing? So you have to be able to know what you're doing in the context of where you're at those times. And that's what I like to do with a lot of the younger people that come in. You'll see it with a lot of, when you watch, our Power Surge editions of NWA, you'll see a lot of that younger talent there. And I like it when they come into me and they ask, what could I have done differently? How could I have done this differently? Or they come to me beforehand to be like, hey, I've got 30 seconds for a promo. This is what I think about saying. What do you think about this? And we can move it and tweak it to where it's going to be the best thing for them and also for the broadcast as a whole.
Yeah, I think that the asking help is maybe the best thing that maybe a racing star could do it. So it's very important. So my last question, the biggest question of the podcast.
El domandone. So we can call it like this, yes.
So Joe, do you have some funny stories that happens to you maybe or you see because you're not in ring, but you see a lot of things maybe in backstage or extra ring?
Okay, so here's a funny story I'll tell you. Boy, this is the maddest I've ever been at someone.
Okay.
We're doing commentary and we're in Oak Grove, Kentucky, doing one of our power trips. And you guys are fans of the Fixers with Jay Bradley and Wrecking Ball Legursky. And boy, those guys love their breakfast cereal, right? They come out, that's their thing. They want to make sure you're having a big bowl of cereal when you watch NWA USA. And we're in the beginning part of the show. It's like the first match of the show. And here comes Jay Bradley. And, he's, 6'5", almost 300 pounds, and he's eating that cereal. And he comes up to the commentary table and he just takes the whole box of cereal and dumps it right in front of me, which at the time I'm like, great, now I got to deal with this. What you don't realize with breakfast cereal, and I don't know if you have this problem in Italy because, these American breakfast cereals are all sugar. And this stuff is becoming a powder, which is then turning into a paste. And it's getting on everything. My notes, my suit. It's in the monitor. And it's just congealing and turning into this doughy, sticky mix. And I'm just sitting there and I'm writhing. And I'm so mad that I have to sit here for like 3 more hours in this mess. And I was so mad. And we got to an intermission and I threw my headset off. I went straight back to the back room and Jay Bradley's sitting in the corner by himself. and I think he was taking his boots off because he was done working that day in front of everybody, which I regret. I should have handled this more professionally. But I went up to him, and I'm going to swear again, but here we go. If you fucking ever